Today we are here to speak about Zabbix 7. Who is waiting for Zabbix 7? Hands up. Okay, I assume all the rest really don't like the upgrades, yeah? So, long story short, Zabbix 7 is bringing a busload of new stuff, and Zabbix 7 is finally coming. You can safely wait for a release during the month of June. And today we will speak about what are those new stuff. What does this busload of new stuff consists of? So we'll speak about visualization. We'll speak about web monitoring, because there is something very good cooking on the side of web monitoring as well. High availability and performance and scalability. We'll speak about as well enhanced interoperability and security, because there are quite some interesting stuff also going on in the interoperability, interconnection with third-party systems and so on. And then we will see what else interesting could be there without discussing it so much in depth. Alright, so Zabbix 7 is coming. What does it mean? Well, for you it doesn't mean that it means that hopefully you will end up upgrading. For us, it means that we have been working on that for over a year and a half currently. We currently reached the beta stage. We have Zabbix 7 Beta 3, which was released yesterday. And with every new beta, we are incorporating new functions. You might already know that it brings big improvements in visualization, performance, and so on. But there are things which you might not know as well, because Zabbix 7 has been a massive development effort, and as you can see over there, there are at the current point over 150 new features implemented, of course among bigger features and smaller features, but still 150 development workloads have been implemented and over 350 fixed bugs only in Zabbix 7. So this is, I think this is really the biggest Zabbix release so far. Alright, let's start diving into the new stuff directly. What will be there when it comes to visualization? And about visualization, some of the stuff have circulated already. So the long-awaited pie charts and donut chart in reality. So this has been something which is finally coming to Zabbix as well. And it will allow more interactivity displaying of monitoring data. It will allow the breakdown of metrics by dimension, of course, and it will allow to select separate data by host and item pattern, customization of colors, of course, sizes, and so on, and it will allow to aggregate by item or dataset, and of course it allows a total value comparison. So going forward, another long awaited feature, the gauge widget. So this is actually very useful to show those kind of metrics which do have a threshold that we want to keep track of at the last part of the gauge widget, like for example CPU, memory, storage. So it's visually impacting to see which metrics are exceeding the level they should not exceed. And of course we already had and continue to have problem detection and alerts for those metrics, but still it is very useful to observe those on a dashboard. New stuff, again, the honeycomb widget. So the honeycomb widget, it is actually very useful to represent a cluster of objects, a cluster of metrics, and as we see on slide here, it works really well for a kind of traffic light representation to have metrics in problematic state in another color, and it allows to visually spot immediately where is the thing which is given a problem. For example, one very useful application of this widget, it could be to show perhaps a VMware cluster of virtual machines. So we can have all of our VMs per VMware cluster in here, and the ones which have problems or not available, we can show in red. Again, other very useful widget, top triggers. So this is extremely useful to find out at the glance which triggers are giving us most of the problems, so which triggers are generating most of the problems, to see what are the most present problems in our infrastructure. And one thing, did you know about this? Hands up. Widget communication engine. So this is one of the things which somehow, I don't know how, sneaked a bit more under the radar, but this is actually my personal favorite new feature in Zabbix 7, because this will allow immediately from Zabbix 7 and even more in the future to have dynamic dashboards allowing communication of parameters between different widgets, as we can see here in the example. Perhaps we could have a particular metric which passes the item ID to a honeycomb widget, and the honeycomb widget will pass the host ID to the host-based widget. So this is really, I would say, some kind of revolutionary feature which is a little bit more under the hood, but in Zabbix 7, and afterwards it will bring substantial benefits. Host dashboard widget. So there are news also about templates, because it will be finally possible to use every widget in hosts dashboards. So we can include any widget we want finally in host dashboards, because before not all the widgets were possible to use, but now finally yes. And speaking about host dashboards again, host navigation pane for host dashboards, because before on host dashboard we had all the information on a single page up until Zabbix 6.4. From Zabbix 7 onward, it will be possible to break into pages the host dashboard as well, similarly as it is done with the global dashboards. So, about visualization, at the end of the day, where are we going with this? So, we want to enhance the visual overview of monitor data. Of course, we want a better visual experience for our users. And as well, we want to give the ability to develop custom widgets as well, because if Zabbix is an open source solution, if you feel that there is something missing with relatively low effort, you are able to add your own visualization widget. And as well, dynamic data source update for widgets, of course, and in reality, we want to improve the user experience and the display of template dashboards, because not to rely only on global dashboards to have a good visual experience, but to have this visual experience to be present also on template dashboards. So the dashboards that we either get out of the box with the Zabbix templates or that we create ourselves. How many of us have created a template on your own? Okay, so still the minority, so still we are doing quite a very good job with default templates. Good to hear. Who is using web monitoring? Okay. Who would like to have more functionalities in web monitoring? Okay, so this is for you. Up until Zabbix 6, web monitoring, as we all know, worked based on curl. So this is still very good to monitor web pages, but in reality this works the best when we know in advance what to expect from a web page, and additionally web pages do bring very often scripting, so they are not only web pages but full-featured web applications. And up until now, the web monitoring could not analyze performance of scripts in web pages, so it was a bit limited when it comes to more complex monitoring scenarios. That's why we decided to improve web monitoring on Zabbix 7, and as of June we are officially introducing browser monitoring in Zabbix. How many of you knew about this? This is amazing, so I'm telling new stuff for everyone. So we are introducing browser-based web monitoring based on W3C web drivers. Therefore, this new browser monitoring will be usable potentially with any browser which provides web drivers, so any browser, to open the door to more complex monitoring scenarios, like monitoring more dynamic pages, monitoring performance of scripts. It will be possible to see in Zabbix screenshots of the web monitoring scenarios step by step. So if something goes not as expected, or if an error is returned, it is indeed possible to get a screenshot of what's going on. When it comes to enhanced interoperability and security, there is also quite substantial new stuff in here. Let's start. Item level timeout. This is very interesting news which also affects the internals of how Zabbix works, because as of now there is Zabbix timeout is defined to work from configuration file. There is a central timeout as of now which is set in the configuration file, and it affects all data collection from Zabbix server or from Zabbix proxy. We are changing this, introducing different type of timeouts which will be configurable from user interface, so from the front end. We will have configuration for global timeout in the administration general section of the front end. Then there will be proxy level timeout, which will affect all the items collected by a proxy, and there will be timeout for individual items. So it will be possible to set timeout per item. There is a question, please.
Does this change allow us to increase the timeout above 30 seconds? This is not hard-coded.
So the question, if I will repeat for the benefit of everyone, does it allow us to change the timeout beyond the limit of 30 seconds, which is now the maximum possible limit? In reality, no, because as you can see here from the snippet of configuration file, the maximum possible limit it still is 30 seconds, but we do believe 30 seconds is a high enough limit to allow collection of the majority of items without timeout, unless of course there is some problem. Another very interesting feature, my second favorite actually after the widget communication framework, it is sending metrics by HTTP, because today it is possible to send metrics to Zabbix server via command line utility. We actually wanted to bring this functionality also to the Zabbix API. That's why we added to the Zabbix API a new method called history push, because and it will allow to actually push metrics to the Zabbix server or proxy using the API. This might be particularly useful for all of those use cases where we want to gather, for example, metrics via script on some particular environments where we cannot have an agent, where we are not allowed to install additional command line tools. I'm thinking specifically about hard-coded appliances where vendor does not allow us to install any additional software, but if we can run whenever we can run a script, we can script the data collection and then push in the history via REST API directly to Zabbix. And this is an example of a JSON request of that history push, where we have the item ID and the actual metric value. So I know this is a feature some of you in this room is waiting for, passing custom input to front-end script, because as of today this was not possible. As of today, when you add the front-end script or script item, you could pass as input something which was coming from an item perhaps. But we have actually implemented this possibility, adding the manual input global variable or global macro to actually pass to Zabbix custom input data. So those custom input data can be defined in a macro, so they can be defined at host level, template level, and so on. But as well, we can pass a comma-separated list of arguments to be used by a particular string. So, before we transit to the next topic, let me ask you an additional question. Who is interested in security within Zabbix? Anything you would, so open question, anything you would like to see concerning security? Let's see who guesses what I am going to talk next. All right, multi-factor authentication. who is going to use this, because I got a lot of requests that this is needed. We have already one person who is going to use it, second person who is going to use it, third person who is going to use it. Big success already. So this is as well some feature which users were waiting for a while. We had implemented it, and we have implemented it given two actual possibility of achieving this multi-factor authentication, either with time-based one-time password or with duo universal prompt. So like with time-based one-time password, we can use all those kind of applications as Google Authenticator, for example, while with duo universal prompt, this is leveraging specific duo security service for this extra layer of authentication. And you can configure multi-factor authentication for specific user groups, for privileged accounts, for example. So this is very good idea to use for super admins, for all the people which have some non-read-only access to Zabbix. So I guess quite a lot of you in this room is Zabbix administrators. It might be that if your company has this kind of policy, you will be authenticating to Zabbix with two-factor authentication. With yes, I know it's annoying, but it increases the security, especially if the Zabbix environment is exposed to the public internet. So what we wanted to achieve by this bulk of feature, we wanted to improve the usability from user interface, to have more and more stuff done from the user interface and not from the configuration, because what happens every time we change the configuration? Well, not every time, but most of the times. No one? Server restart. So every time we change the conf file, we need the restart, or most of the times. Therefore, we wanted to improve the user interface. As well, we wanted to increase interoperability with third-party systems, so more of API, so like sending history via API, so that also third-party systems which can share things via data via API would be allowed to better integrate with Zabbix. And also as well allowing further level of customization. And absolutely last but not least, we wanted to increase enterprise grade security, so with stuff like two-factor authentication. And now the chapter everyone is waiting for, at least in this room, I think: high availability, performance, and scalability. So, enhanced data collection and network discovery performance. We have increased the performance for data collection and network discovery. We'll see how, but all of those changes are basing on one feature which you do not find so much described in the public roadmap, you do not find so much in the documentation, because it's not something that affects the daily user experience, but it is something extremely important. The multi-threading to improve vertical scalability. So, so we have, what have we done? We have basically moved some of the Zabbix process to work not only as process, but also to work with threads. Why? Before that, we had like pollers, discoverers, and so on. And for example, we instantiate certain number of pollers. Every poller is a new process. So again, every time we needed to scale up our Zabbix resource usage vertically, we needed to again put our hands into the configuration and again Zabbix server restart. So with Zabbix 7 we have decided to leverage the threads, and we are moving. We are actually starting to move, but the long-term plan is to move all the processes to this new thread-based architecture. We have so far we have moved some of them, so that whenever there will be the need to grow the resource usage, Zabbix itself, it will instantiate new threads within the same process, making a more efficient usage for scaling up and scaling down. And where we are going with this? With this we want to achieve within a few releases the auto tune, which brings the game to a whole new level of cloud nativity, let's say. So the multi-threading architecture, actually it affects data collectors, because we were actually able to bring to make data collection asynchronous. So as we know, data in Zabbix can be collected by various means. We have pollers, droppers, pingers, collectors for HTTP, etc. So poller process can, as of Zabbix 6 and 6.4, can collect a single metric at a time, because the data collection is by now synchronous. So this means basically that the servers or the proxies pull in the data, and until does not get the data back, cannot collect the next item. And the maximum number of pollers is limited to 1000. So in Zabbix 7 we have differentiated it a little bit, introducing additional poller types like SNMP pollers, Zabbix agent pollers, and HTTP check pollers. And we have made the polling process asynchronous. So basically, if before Zabbix 7 you could poll one at a time, you send a poll request and you wait for data to come back, in Zabbix 7 and onward, you'll send all of the polling requests and the data will come back asynchronously. So in case there is latency, in case of this kind of scenario, we are not limited anymore, because probably another metric will come back, and that metric which was delaying will come back after a certain time, but it will not affect all the other part of data collection. And another indirect benefit of thread architecture, it is concurrent network discovery. So yes, again, we can now start several discovery processes and discovery checks at once. This is done by introducing new processes like Discovery Manager and Discovery Worker, which was previously known as Discovery Process. And if I want to configure concurrency for network discovery, I can configure it on the configuration on the discovery rule level, and of course I can still start a certain number of discoverers in the configuration file, and I am going to configure it at discovery level in this way with the maximum concurrent checks. So I am able to run several different checks in concurrency, and this optimizes the discovery process quite greatly, saving us quite a lot of time with respect to the past. Now, the feature. What is going next is the feature literally everyone in this room and outside of this room has been waiting for. Proxy, high availability, and scalability. So, how have we done this? We have done this introducing the notion of proxy groups to support load balancing and high availability. So, hosts can be monitored by a proxy group or a single proxy, as it used to be. We do have a failover period to decide if a proxy is online, so it's still responding, or offline. And this works as per architecture. Now the hosts will be reporting not to one single proxy, but to a proxy group. So if a proxy group entirely is offline, the hosts are assigned to the group which is still continuing monitoring. How does it work in practice? For example, for load balancing and HA, let's say I have a subset of devices, the one marked in red, which is assigned to proxy number 1. Now, proxy number 1 goes offline. What happens then? That the devices are evenly redistributed among the other proxies in the group, so that every proxy will take a bunch of devices in order to balance the load and to provide high availability. And with this we do provide high availability of proxy, automated distribution of hosts across the group, of course, and this provides as well one very interesting thing, which is auto-scaling of proxies within, for example, Kubernetes environments, because we keep add proxies to the group and the load will be automatically redistributed. So this feature should be released in the beta versions quite soon, so for additional technical details that will be, I think, in a month from now or so, the development documentation available on the Zabbix website. So now let's fact check. Who was waiting for this? 1, 2 only? Who is using proxy? Okay. Next feature coming in Zabbix 7, enhanced edge computing, translated in-memory data collection for proxies. So edge computing, why? Because the Zabbix proxy, it is actually performing edge computing, because it's scaling, as we know, scaling indefinitely data collection throughout multiple proxies which are closer to the devices than the server can be. Therefore, this is a distributed network which is performing edge computing. And as of today, the data collection by the proxy is kept within the proxy database, as we all know. But we have actually added, apart from the current present disk mode for buffering, so based on database, which I remember it can be either the embedded SQLite or of course MySQL and Postgres, which could create some bottleneck on large proxies. We have added as well the memory mode, so actually the data will be kept on memory, of course, and hybrid mode as well, with data being sent to the Zabbix server directly, but flashing the memory buffer actually to the disk, so to the database. Again, what do we want to achieve by all these features about high availability and scalability? We want to improve, of course, scalability. Horizontal scalability is already there, hence we're now focusing on vertical scalability. We want to optimize the usage of available resources, and we wanted to implement high availability on data collection, because the proxy currently was a kind of single point of failure within Zabbix. And anyway, in a true redundant architecture, we do introduce the high availability for Zabbix server in Zabbix 6. The database, of course, can be made highly available by database means. Now we are introducing high availability for the proxy. And there are whispers that by Zabbix 8 we are looking into the direction of auto-scaling, but anyway, not much of a whisper. For the future, Zabbix is indeed looking into the direction of auto-scaling. We are a bit in advance with the time. Let's see some other notable improvements before giving the time for Q&A session. So we actually are continuing to improve user experience, introducing model forms. One thing which was there, went away, and now came back. Using of macros in item names and now item prototype. Who is missing macros in item names? Oh yes. So we actually some years ago we stopped doing it, but then this raised quite some concern within the community, and we have decided to bring this back. Another thing which was quite awaited, the support of multi-page PDF reporting, scheduled reports, then HTTP connectors for native Kafka, remote command execution via active checks. This might be also a very interesting one to use, like to execute remote commands from active checks for full custom metric collection, also in those contexts where passive check was not an option. And we are introducing additional ARM packages for 64 bits ARM platforms for Debian, Red Hat, and SUSE, and as well much more. We have discussed perhaps 20 new features out of 150. But this is not all in general, because we are introducing new templates and integration. Zabbix templates are always updating, not only in coincidence with feature requests, but we are actually, for Zabbix 7, we are introducing new templates as well around cloud monitoring, specifically for Azure. We have introduced recently an Azure template with cost monitoring. For AWS, this was already present from a while. So we are doing continuous work to keep our templates up to date and to expand the template package. So, in conclusion, get ready for Zabbix 7. Our aim is to bring a single pane of glass experience, and we are actually working on that direction. Improving cloud native scalability and high availability, increasing the out-of-the-box and the custom experience at the same time. Yes, because Zabbix offers a great out-of-the-box experience, but Zabbix wouldn't be Zabbix if it would not offer as great customization experience. Fully ready for edge computing use case, of course. So with the recent addition of proxy, high availability and load balancing, our edge computing functionality offer becomes complete. And what is the goal at the end of the day? It is always to have informed decision making and improved mean time to resolution for problems. So this is the goal of monitoring system at the end of the day, and Zabbix's goal as well, to make us live a better life.